Okay, I'm back, and this time I hope the stopwatch is going to function correctly. And the point I was making is that if you're dealing with a complex system and you start messing around in there, that you better know what you're doing. I'm referring, of course, to the IT professionals now, because if you change something, it may well have repercussions in other parts of the system that were not anticipated. You don't want people with a Lone Ranger attitude in IT. You know, people who think they're so brilliant that they'll just do this, do that, the other thing, and it's going to be okay, because this, that, and the other thing may in fact solve the immediate problem and create a cascade of far more serious problems than what was, patched or allegedly solved in the immediate instance. Criticality. There was a time in which banks and other institutions kind of ran their networks, but if necessary could fall back on the old manual processes if necessary. Pretty much now, when the network's down, everything stops. Modern organizations cannot run without their IT resources up and running. These things are critical, and they're all the more critical in a hospital where you probably have communication systems interoperating with clinical systems. One of you, my students, is writing her term paper about an EICU unit, meaning that because ICU units are sometimes not adequately staffed, which is another story, that you could have a service provided such that some of the monitoring of patients in ICU is done by professionals off-site, remotely. Think of the consequences of something like that going down, because you can be pretty sure that once the network is installed, that there's going to be pressure in the organization to reduce the already probably understaffed ICU units. And if you're depending upon remote monitoring of patients and the network fails, I don't need to connect the dots, do I? And also, there are threats. I wish we could live in a world where, in the natural world, all the animals have predators and they live out their lives looking over their shoulder, wondering whether they're about to be chased down and killed by some other animal. I wish the world were not like that. In our society, we also have threats, and some of the threats now are virtual in nature. People putting viruses on the internet just for the joy of being antisocial or whatever the word is. People who use very sophisticated hacking skills to steal money and other valuable resources. There's a Black Hat conference that just concluded, and I don't think the people who attended it were all villains, but it was about hacking and about the threats that I'm sure all the people who attended were not villains. Perhaps a few were. Federal agencies, hospitals, banks, organizations that run power grids, water systems, oil stations, everything is dependent upon these modern communications technologies, and most of them are under almost continuous attack of one kind or another. And without going into the details, the threats are substantial. especially if you consider, well, let's not go there. The threats are substantial. The IT department provides services and they manage those services. Those services must be dependable, reliable, with adequate performance, and with as much security baked in as possible. Dependability. Does it work when you need it to work? Reliability. Does it really do what you think it's doing? Performance. Does it get back to you quick enough, or is it, does it crawl so slowly that it's almost worthless? And of course, multiple varieties of security in terms of data security, disaster preparation, guarding against theft or corruption of data, and so forth. So, the IT department needs to learn from its experiences. Most of them, all of them, have a help desk. Once a problem has been identified and a solution has been found, it should not be necessary to continue to identify and resolve the problem. End users should not have to be the ones who find the problem and then call in and someone says, oh, yes, that's a known incompatibility. Well, it wasn't known to me, and I should not have had to find it. Now, I realize I don't live in a perfect world, and I'm not, I think, being overly critical. My point is that when a problem has been identified, it should be fixed, and that everybody who needs to know the fix should be made aware of it, and that end users, if possible, should not have to go through the hoops in order to find out what the fix is. Systems thinking is important. If I do this, I may solve my immediate problem, but what else am I going to cause in additional problems? And it is necessary to always think in terms of root causes. Yes, we may be able to patch this quickly, but what's really going on here? What is the reason we're having this problem, and how can we identify and address the root cause? That's what it's really all about. Someday I'll go into service-oriented architecture, which is different. But right now, this chapter is about the services provided by the IT department in an organization and how they can and should be made what they can be and should be. Thank you.